Diana woke up suddenly, finding herself in the middle of the hallway, as if a capricious fairy had summoned her to her stage. Her ears were still filled with Mistress's imposing voice, whispering her name defiantly. Diana's heart raced, and she glanced around quickly, searching for the source of the order. The corridor stretched out before her like the setting for an incredible adventure. Through a space arranged like a labyrinth, Diana was carried forward as if on a stage, where every step took on the significance of an actor's appearance. Eventually, she found herself in front of a door that shone with a sparkling light of mystery. Wasting no time, Diana bravely stepped inside. There, in the depths, Mrs. Attache reigned like a queen on the throne of her palace. Her gaze was stern, like a veteran of theatrical battles, and an inner fire blazed in her eyes. The rising storm of pieces of fabric dancing magically in the air created an atmosphere of inevitable challenge. And so Diana, like a whirlwind, burst into this fashion theater, feeling the strange touches of multicolored fabrics. Mrs. Attache took the lead again and, like a conductor, pointed out the fourth fabric to Diana. Her commanding words sounded like a melody, leading Diana into a world of styles and fabrics. Diana's heart beat in unison with the rhythm of this incredible performance. With every movement, with every transition from stage to stage, she realized that she had become part of a theatrical work where fashion was brought to life. This whirlwind of styles, emotions, and fabrics enveloped her, making her forget everything but the magic of the theater, in which she became not just an actress, but a real star. At her mistress's command, Diana was forced to take off on the wings of time, plunging into an adventure that stretched beyond the golden curtains of the evening sunset. Immediately, like a whirlwind, she found herself in a carriage that, like a mysterious time train, carried her away. The heavens remained a gift, and the soft light of sunset reflected in the windows, creating an air of mystery. Diana begged, pleaded, begged to postpone this trip until the next day, letting herself savor the last rays of the sun. But Mrs. Attache was as adamant as the steel doors of the palace. She declared that seeing her future outfit was something she could not postpone. Like the Queen of Time, she demanded that Diana go to the atelier now, even if the stars had already risen on the horizon. So Diana found herself captivated by the sunset, traveling through time and space to reach her destination. She felt the winds of time caressing her face and the stars witnessing this unusual journey. Despite her pleas, fate told her to accept the challenge and set out on her journey, like the heroine of an epic who meets her destiny in the mysterious corners of time. The maids, like sinister fairies, began to dispense their snickers, as if shimmering with malicious mirth. Diana's inability to keep her cool because of her young age became a subject of ridicule. Their laughter, like a menacing wind, fell upon the frightened girl, leaving her alone with a sense of humiliation. Mrs. Attache, in her impartial authority, contributed her word to this gloomy chorus, declaring that Diana should cease this flood of tears, ignoring her fear as a past stage. Under her cold gaze, like a sword, Diana was forced to suppress her feelings, as if becoming an actress in the theater of life, where fear and tears were unacceptable accessories. Deep in the night, when shadows began to dance in the streets of the city, Diana, still trembling from her previous ordeal, left the mysterious atelier. She carried Mistress's accomplished task like a burden of secrecy, and through her tears she stepped through the streets clutching the amulet created by her mother's hands. But returning to Mistress's nest was impossible. Not a single carriage glimmered on the horizon, and Diana was abandoned to hopelessness. So she wandered in the silence of the night like a lost soul, facing the dark unknown in front of her. But despite her fear, her steps were guided forward, as if deep into the mysterious labyrinth of life. Left with no choice but to take to her feet, Diana set off on an uncertain journey through the forest, leading to the Baron's estate. She became the youngest maid in this magnificent mansion owned by the Baron, whose commanding voice and heavy hand could determine the fate of many. Diana, while the forest whispered its secrets, remembered her distant past life. She had not always been a maid. Diana's mother had been a governess in this house when Diana had been fortunate enough to play the games of childhood with little Mistress Atisha. In those days, Diana and Atisha were like inseparable friends who created their own world in the heart of a luxurious mansion. Diana didn't even think about her father then, because her mother was everything to her. However, at the age of 7, she faced a cruel loss. Her mother died in an accident. The Baron, the lord of the house, decided to leave Diana under his wing. He had no problem sheltering the orphan left in a difficult situation. Fearing that her path might simply be blocked by a wall of ruthless asylums, Diana decided to take matters into her own hands and quickly entered the maid service. A glimpse of life in this noble house was her only assurance, to avoid the dark forebodings of a homeless future. It was then that Diana and Atasha's relationship began to change, creating a crack in what had once been a friendship as strong as the ancient trees in the forest. As the years passed, Diana blossomed like a rare flower, her hair shimmering with silver fans and her brown eyes a shade of scarlet. This gift of nature attracted attention, but not always positive. Every day, the attitude towards Diana changed like the coastal waves. Her beautiful appearance became the cause of envy and discontent. The women in the mansion secretly envied her, and the men unceremoniously appraised her. This outward beauty, like a double-edged sword, began to cause tension on all sides. Diana, in her undeniable sophistication, fought against external prejudice while retaining her luminous strength and pride. She didn't want to be the object of envy, but the shadow of prejudice haunted her, creating many difficulties along the way. Thus, she became not only a maid in the Baron's mansion, but also the heroine of her own story, which confronts the dark vicissitudes that threaten her future. On that exciting day when Atisha was celebrating her 11th birthday, a sinister character, her supposed fiancé, burst into her life. She had dreamt of attention, of being the center of attention of the day, but unfortunately for her, meeting her fiancé turned out to be a disappointment. Atisha's heart was broken when she realized that his interest was not in her at all, but in an ordinary maid named Diana. And then the dark days began for Atisha, full of abuse of the unfortunate Diana. And so, walking through the dark forest, Diana suddenly witnessed a cruel scene. The scene of a robbery played out before her frightened eyes, where bandits like shadows were robbing the unfortunate man. Dark clouds hung over the forest, and the ominous light of the moon only emphasized the atmosphere of danger. One of the bandits approached little Diana like a shadow, shimmering menacingly in the darkness. Thus began a new chapter in Diana's story, and now, in this ominous forest, she will face the unknown and the fateful. Atisha, hidden in her own dark thoughts, is unaware of the adventures unfolding in the dark corners of her world. The man, realizing that witnesses might reveal his evil plans, immediately summoned his gang of accomplices. The sinister shadows huddled together, their cold eyes twinkling with insidious intent. It was decided that the witnesses had to be eliminated. Diana, still trembling with fear, tried to escape the embrace of tears, but her plans were thwarted by the man's sudden glance. He was struck by the gleam of faint light on the gold locket around the poor girl's neck. Deciding that the medallion might be worth more than it seemed, the man reached out his hand, seeking to seize the precious amulet. The locket's chain failed and broke. Diana took advantage of the moment and dashed to the nearest tree, protecting her valuables. This unforeseen episode against the backdrop of the dark forest created a cinematic scene, as if from a fantasy movie. And then, at the most critical moment, a mysterious hooded man entered the scene. The shadow of his person differed markedly from that of the bandits, their boldness interrupted like a sudden thunderous gust. He stood in the darkness like a ghost, evoking unknown fears. The bandits stopped as if frozen in time, sensing an unknown threat from the mysterious stranger. Clutching their weapons, the bandits resolutely rushed towards the mysterious hooded man. But like a spell, the next moment they found themselves lying on the ground, defeated by a force they could not understand. The mysterious stranger, emerging from the dark depths of the forest, looked questioningly at Diana, who was in the middle of this incredible struggle. With tear-stained eyes, Diana looked at the mysterious savior, her gaze filled with mixed feelings of fear and gratitude. The hooded man approached her, extending a helping hand like a sorcerer from ancient legends. His voice, which sounded like a magical whisper, said it was dangerous to be alone in the forest and offered his help. Diana, still impressed by what had happened, silently held out her hand to him. Suddenly, the wizard came closer and looked at Diana's face, which was illuminated by the light of the moon. He raised his eyebrows in surprise as if reading her soul and said, "Philippa, you are safe. Follow me, and I will give you shelter in this mysterious forest full of secrets and magic." In the dusty glow of the moonlight that cut through the night darkness like a magic sword, the wizard faltered. It was not Philippa, as he had supposed, but a girl who looked strikingly like her. He realized his mistake, but had no time to apologize when Diana, grateful for the rescue, expressed her gratitude. The warlock, noticing the loss of his hood, decided to set the record straight. The moonlight enveloped his figure, creating mysterious shadows. He carefully removed his hood, illuminated only by the flickering light of the night, and met Diana's gaze to see if her name was really Philippa or her mother. Diana, shifting her gaze from the dark mask to his face, shook her head, indicating her identity. Her mother, she said, was named April. At that moment, Diana's attention was drawn to the absence of the gold locket her mother always carried with her. She felt her heart pound faster, realizing that the locket had disappeared in the chaos of fleeing from the bandits. Her eyes twinkled like stars in the darkness, reflecting anxiety and determination. A shadow of anxiety grew within her, and the wizard, unwittingly immersing the viewer in an atmosphere of mystery and danger, gazed at Diana, ready to help her on this difficult journey. Diana knelt in the darkness of the night and began to search the ground for the precious locket. Her fingers darted across the ground like nimble magic arrows, searching for a lost treasure. At that moment, as if reading her thoughts, the sorcerer drew a locket from his pocket and held it up to Diana. She shuddered with surprise and joy as she recognized her precious jewel in his hands. As if by magic, the locket was back in front of her. A delighted smile lit up Diana's face, and she couldn't hide her joy. "Thank you, good wizard, for returning my locket," she exclaimed, filling the night with her delight. However, the warlock, despite the girl's joy, kept a puzzled expression on his face. He did not believe that it was really her jewelry. Diana, realizing that the locket belonged not only to her, but also to her mother, met the moment with mixed feelings. She felt something magical in the air, as if an age-old secret had been revealed before her eyes. With determination in his eyes, he decided to reveal the locket like an ancient scroll of secrets. And inside this magical artifact, a photograph opened up, captivating the eye. An image of Diana's mother. The enchanter spoke a mysterious name. Philippa Orid. Philippa, spoiled with luxury and known for her noble origins, blossomed in the opulent castle of her father, Count Orid. The Count was considered the wealthiest man on the entire continent, and Philippa was raised in exquisite surroundings, captivating with her charm and refined manners. Tessevitz was the only one who could enter her heart. They attended the academy together, where every day was full of fun and adventure. But it wasn't just the joys that brought them together. They also shared a love that grew with each passing moment. With graduation day came the time to return home. Tessevitz and Philippa, absorbed in each other, returned to Count Orid's castle. The enchanter, their third mate, had decided to go to the Tower of Peace, seeking to learn magic of the highest order. However, fate had pre-planned to change the course of their lives. Philippa mysteriously disappeared, as if she had been swallowed up by the night. Tessevitz, left in utter despair, drowned in the depths of alcohol, lost in his own soul. Without news of Philip, his life had lost all meaning. The enchanter, returning from the Tower of Peace, found his friend in such a state, but even he could not shed light on the mystery of Philippa's disappearance. Tessevitz, trapped in the void of loss, was not ready to accept the truth, and the warlock, left in mute silence, decided to leave him with his own pain. Thus began the whirlwind of secrets and loss that enveloped the lives of the three friends. An unknown fog-like force engulfed Philippa, and the shadows of betrayal and loss consumed the soul of Tessevitz. The story of the three friends became a saga of mystery and pain that haunts their fates like a shadow, remaining in the hearts of those who survived. Before Philippa's disappearance, the conversation with the warlock had been unusually exciting. At the moment she made her request, the warlock did not seem to fully realize the importance of what she was saying. Perhaps he thought it was just another amusement or a joke in the style of a theater play. The sorcerer, with characteristic ease, joked about Tessevitz's supposed jealousy, unaware that a different flame burned in Philippa's heart. Her face, which usually sparkled with joy and mocking brilliance, was unusually serious. She asked him to keep their meeting a secret, as if her request had some unknown magic that made the warlock's heart grow fonder. By some miracle or strange coincidence, the warlock could not remember Philippa's face at that moment. It was as if the shadow of some unknown spell had swallowed up the memory of that conversation. And ever since, he had felt a frightening emptiness in his memory, as if someone had torn a page out of it. With his mastery of magic, the warlock set out on a futile search for Philippa. One mysterious evening, as the sunset rays penetrated through the thick foliage of the tree wonders, the wizard sensed something unusual in his surroundings. The shadow that had long followed him took the form of a wolf spirit, which, as if sensing magic in the air, began to sniff the night grass thoroughly. The wolf's trail led him to a mysterious place where the golden medallion with the wind spirit that had served Tessevitz faithfully lay. The medallion was polished with stars and held ancient wisdom. The smooth curves of its shape seemed to dance on the border between reality and magic. Suddenly, the wizard's gaze fell on a small engraving in the center of the medallion where the wind spirit lurked. There, in the flickering light, appeared the face of a girl whose name seemed to be slipping from the warlock's memory. He stared at the image, trying to recall those times which, like a legend, melted into the fog of his memories. Tessevitz, the warlock's faithful companion, guarded the locket like a sacred artifact, and the breath of wind that touched their faces seemed to summon memories. With every glance at the photograph of the girl, the warlock felt his past awakening from the depths of memory like a dream that had long been hiding in the shadows of his soul. Even in magical worlds filled with enchantment and mystery, each character bears traces of their past, like a picture locket, reminding them of the mysterious stories hidden in the deepest depths of their hearts. On that very evening, as magic intertwined with darkness and the stars revealed their secrets, there was a sudden shrill cry for help, breaking through the peaceful silence of the forest. The warlock, whose eyes glittered with unread spells, hesitated at first. His inner world was filled with magic and mystery, and the screams threw him off to uncharted circumstances. But despite his magical worries, the warlock decided to take charge. He sent his faithful companion, a wolf spirit, to search for the source of the screams. The wolf, as if summoned from the shadows, headed deep into the night forest to uncover the mystery that lurked within his grasp. As the warlock stepped onto the moonlit path, Diana stood before him. Her cries for help became voices that penetrated the warlock's heart. And at that moment, like a star in the dark forest, the young woman's soul flashed like a star. He looked at Diana's face, and suddenly, like a whirlwind of memories, his mind was filled with images of the past. Philippa's face, long lost in the shroud of oblivion, surfaced in his mind. Like magic that slowly unfolds, the memories of Philip refreshed his soul as the wind brings the scents of spring flowers. So, in the moment of meeting Diana, the wizard realized that the magic of the past remained with him like an invisible cloak, and that every hero he met made his mark on his wonderful world. The charmer, sensing that every word and every mystery in the story was imbued with magic, did not hesitate and went straight to Diana with a question about the connection between the little girl and that mysterious Philippa from the golden locket. Diana, her gaze filled with mystery and hidden fears, did not shy away from answering. "It's my mother," she whispered, as if she were reciting the words of a magic spell, calling upon the powers that controlled their destiny. The warlock felt that the magic of this evening was only beginning to unfold, like a mystery whose solution was ajar before his eyes. However, when the warlock dared to ask about the whereabouts of Diana's mother, tears flashed in her eyes like shimmering gems. She, barely containing herself, told the warlock that her mother had left this world, leaving Diana alone among the shadows of the forest and the memories. The warlock, as if shaken by a magic blow, felt a stirring in his soul. The magic of the past associated with Philippa's face now took on a new hue, echoes of a life gone by, of sadness and lost moments. In that moment, in the midst of a night filled with magic and Diana's tears, the warlock realized that even in magical worlds, there are moments of pain that intertwine with magic to create an amazing story, incredible and deeply human. The charmer, feeling his heart fill with compassion and care, sincerely apologized to Diana for bringing a shadow of sadness into her life. He hugged her gently, like a magical amulet that could soften even the hardest moments. The girl, overcome with excitement and grief, continued to sob, finding in the warlock's shoulder the comforting support she so sorely lacked. A few moments later, when Diana had calmed down a bit, the enchanter, like a wizard in the midst of his charms, decided to give her back a piece of the magic she had lost. He extracted a golden locket from his sleeves, as if it were a gift from the heart of magic itself. The girl followed the wizard's every move in amazement, as if she were glowing with the reflection of that magic. The sorcerer held out the locket to Diana, and when she took it in her hands, joy flashed in her eyes. It was a miracle, like the return of a lost treasure. She looked at her reflection in the glint of gold and felt the magic of the moment envelop her like a soft blanket. The wizard gently placed the locket around Diana's neck, as if it were a symbol of her inner light, which had been rediscovered. And at that moment, the girl's eyes sparkled with admiration. She saw before her not just a guide to the world of magic, but a real wizard standing before her in his majestic robes. The delight kindling in her eyes was a testament to the fact that magic can bring out miracles even in the most difficult moments. Diana straightened her dress and looked at the warlock with joy in her eyes. Her smile, like a ray of sunlight, illuminated the dark forest they were in. The warlock's gaze was full of amazement, as if he had discovered something magical beyond his comprehension. This unusual moment made Diana's heart race. She hadn't expected his words to provoke such a reaction. Perhaps there were secrets hidden in this wizard that even Diana couldn't fathom. However, instead of holding a grudge, the warlock, like a gallant gentleman, apologized for his wrong words. The past, like a foggy shroud, hung before the warlock's eyes. In his eyes were memories of lost times or events that had left an indelible mark on his soul, and yet he continued to call Diana Philippa, as if it were an integral part of his memories. Suddenly, Diana felt a sharp pain in her arm. She hadn't realized she'd been injured while running away from the bandits in this dark forest. Bending over in pain, she felt the warlock, like a wizard, instantly provide help with his magic. Diana's hand began to heal as if under the influence of a magic spell. Diana, marveling at this extraordinary healing, could not help but thank him. While the warlock explained that full recovery would take time, Diana felt every moment of this magical journey becoming something amazing and mysterious to her. The powers of magic, the warlock's past, and the healing of his hand created an incredible combination in this dark forest, like a page from a magical book they were opening together. The warlock, as if suddenly sensing the coolness of the dark forest, threw his robe over Diana with skill, as if creating a warm coziness in this mysterious atmosphere. The cloak enveloped the girl like a protective covering, and despite the damp cold around her, she felt warm and safe. "Where is your father?" the warlock asked, his voice sounding like a melody in the silence of the forest. In response, however, Diana only shrugged her shoulders. She had never seen her father in all the 13 years of her life, as if he were a shadow of the past. The warlock's gaze penetrated Diana's eyes as if he could read her soul, revealing secrets she didn't even realize she had. Suddenly, the warlock realized that Diana was Tessowitz's daughter, as if revealing long-lost secrets. It turned out that her origin carried mysteries that she had not even realized. Suddenly, the warlock took Diana in his arms, as if showing his protection and care. "You mustn't exert yourself yet after healing," he said, as if opening a world of magic and limitless possibilities for Diana. In the wizard's arms, she felt warmth and tenderness, as if he was her support in this mysterious journey. And so, in the wizard's arms, Diana set off on her journey, full of mystery and magic, leaving behind the damp past grass of the dark forest. Hermann Rechef, a sorcerer with wise eyes and a robe like a fiery cloak, held Diana close to him so that she would not fall. His words resounded in the dark woods like enchantments opening a new chapter in their magical journey. "My name is Hermann Rechef," the warlock introduced himself, his name sounding like a mysterious melody in the silence of the forest. Walking along the shaky ground, he caught Diana's gaze and began to tell the story of how he became her protector. He told her that he was a friend of her mother's, as if recreating her connection to what remained a mysterious shadow in the past. Hermann, like a wise mentor, told Diana that the pendant she wore had magical powers within it. He cast a spell on the pendant himself, emphasizing that this magical amulet now belonged to Diana. Magic sounded in the dark forest, as if magic was in every word Hermann said. For Diana, it was an opening, as if a magic veil was lifting, leaving behind light and secrets. The pendant around her neck now appeared to her not just as a piece of jewelry, but as a gateway to the world of magic, where every diamond was a drop of magic. For the first time, she realized her role in this magical journey, and each step forward became for her a step into an uncharted world of mystery and adventure. Hermann turned to Diana with a question which he had long carried in his soul. Heartily and discreetly, he asked her, "When did your mother die?" Hermann, as if holding a most precious treasure in his hands, caught her momentary confusion. In answer to the question, Diana, her gaze drowned in memories, began to tell her sad story. The little girl, still in Hermann's arms, reminisced about that lost time. "My mother died in a carriage accident when I was only 7 years old," she whispered, like a musical note sounding in the silence. Surrounded by the coolness of the night forest, they witnessed a story that stretched across the years. Diana, as if opening the pages of a forgotten book, recalled how her mother had been swept away by eternity. The pain of loss and longing for the unreturned moments of childhood resounded in her story. Hermann, despite the bitterness in Diana's eyes, suggested that she go to her mother's grave tomorrow. Under that heavenly light, as witnesses of eternal memory, they planned to step into the past to honor the memory of the departed. With the first rays of the morning sun playing a magical dance on her pillow, Diana slowly opened her eyes. It was a quiet morning in the room, full of gentle light and warmth. But then she noticed something unusual. The sun that played carelessly on her face seemed too bright and majestic for the modest windows of the maid's room where she usually woke up. That realization made her heart beat faster. Suddenly, Diana jumped up, sensing not the usual humble bed, but a luxurious bed that seemed a cloud of comfort and sophistication. She looked around, her gaze sliding over the unusually refined interior of the room, so unfamiliar and yet mesmerizing. Confusion swept over Diana. She worried that the head maid would no doubt be furious to learn that Diana had not yet begun her duties. In her mind, she imagined the stern looks and unhappy words that would follow her tardiness. Then, like a whirlwind, another thought flashed through Diana's mind. About Hermann. Where was he now? What had happened to him? Worry and anxiety enveloped her. For Hermann was not merely an acquaintance, but a part of her present life, an important and significant person. She reflected, trying to remember what events had preceded this morning. Waking up in an unfamiliar environment, Diana immediately felt anxious and confused. She looked around the room, trying to make sense of where she was. She was wearing an unfamiliar dress, which added to her confusion. The thought of having to return to the Baron's estate flashed through her mind, but she found that she didn't even have shoes. With this anxious thought, she headed resolutely for the door, but her steps stopped when she saw Hermann outside the door. Hermann, standing outside the door, seemed a totally unexpected appearance to Diana. Her surprise was so great that she was for a moment speechless. Herman, noticing her confusion, inquired about her condition. He entered the room where Diane was awake, and she began to explain that physically she was fine, but her excitement was clearly evident on her face. Herman offered to call the maid and offered Diane something to eat. In response, Diana expressed concern about her clothes, which she could not find. Herman, not without some regret, admitted that her old clothes had been thrown away. This caused even more excitement for Diana, who asked if she could borrow the dress she had woken up in, promising to wash it thoroughly before returning. To this, Herman replied that there would be no need to return the dress. This dialogue feels like a mixture of concern and misunderstanding between the characters, hinting at the complicated relationship and uncertainty of the future that awaits Diana in this new and mysterious place. Suddenly, the conversation between Herman and Diana took an unexpected turn. Herman, as if noting Diana's inner turmoil, made the remark that nightgowns were not meant to be worn outdoors. He pointed to the clothes he had prepared for her, assuming that would be a better option. Diana looked at the new outfit and asked again if she could borrow the clothes. Herman apparently agreed, adding that there would be no need to return those clothes either. Herman then made a remark about Diana seeming to be in too much of a hurry. In response, Diane expressed her alarm at her possible tardiness, which she said might have angered a certain mistress. This moment confused Herman. He asked decisively which mistress he was referring to. When Diana mentioned that she works as a maid, Herman was clearly surprised by this revelation. This exchange of remarks between Herman and Diana reveals new facets of their relationship. There is a look of bewilderment and surprise in Herman's gaze at the fact that Diana, who is in such an exquisite place, is actually a simple maid. This fact adds complexity to their interaction, making the story more multifaceted and exciting. Diana, gripped by anxiety and confusion, froze in front of the door, shrouded in a mysterious foreboding of the inevitable. A storm of doubt and apprehension raged in her heart, for she was well aware that an unpleasant conversation awaited her. With her will in her fist, she crosses the threshold and enters the room where the older maids are ready to voice their displeasure. They, like disgruntled birds, immediately descend upon Diana with a hail of reproaches. There is tension in the air, and each word sounds like a loud clap, breaking the silence of the room. They accuse Diana of disappearing all night, leaving her duties unattended. The maid Laura, with particular pathos and indignation, puts forward the suggestion that Diana has deliberately failed to appear, thereby sabotaging Mrs. Atisha's meeting with her fiancé. Diana stands like a stone statue, listening attentively to every word. Her face expresses no emotion, but her gaze conceals an ocean of inner turmoil and uncertainty. At that moment, the head maid announces, imperiously and sternly, that it is time for Laura to go to Mrs. Atisha. Diana has to accept the punishment of a fine for her rash departure without warning. So, in this room full of tension and unspoken accusations, Diana stands alone, heavy with the weight of realizing the consequences of her actions, left to face the uneasy reality of her situation. Diana reacts with visible horror to the head maid's words about the additional punishment of a week's cleaning on the second floor of the annex. Her gaze becomes even more frightened, and her eyes flicker with the desperate hope of finding understanding and compassion. She tries to object, to find an excuse for her action, but her attempt is cut short by the sharp intervention of the head maid. The head maid stands like a rock, unwavering in front of Diana. Her words sound like a verdict. If Diana doesn't like something, she can leave, because there are dozens of others who would like to take her place. These words, spoken with such unquestioning confidence, sound like a challenge to Diana. Suddenly, like a lightning bolt piercing the heavy atmosphere of the room, Diana announces her departure with desperate determination. This word, uttered by her, sounds unexpected and even shocking to the maids. They, amazed by her courage, as if caught off guard, cannot believe that Diana is actually taking such a step. Their eyes are a mixture of bewilderment and amazement, for Diana's decision is completely contrary to their expectations. In this moment, Diana seems to them not just a maid, but something much bigger, brave and determined, someone who can defy fate. There was a tense atmosphere in Herman's cozy home. Herman, who is used to being sure of every decision he makes, is faced with the unexpected this time. He, sitting in his room, expresses surprise at Diana's decision to quit. He reasons aloud, bringing to Diana's attention that she has no place to go and no guardian to care for her. His words are imbued with concern and anxiety for the girl's fate. Then, as if seeing something important, Herman makes an unexpected proposal. He offers to become Diana's guardian. This sentence, spoken with genuine care and kindness, startles Diana. She finds herself drawn into a whirlwind of events that changes her entire life. Meanwhile, Laura's voice is heard in the room. She yells that Diana is not acting seriously, unaware that Diana now has a guardian. Laura's words are filled with rage and resentment. She can't accept that Diana has found a way out of a difficult situation so easily. The head maid intervenes, stopping Laura. The head maid, who is always in control of the situation, realizes that arguing and shouting will not lead to a solution. Laura, feeling defeated and unable to bear the humiliation, decides to leave the room. She leaves, shoving Diana with her shoulder, a shove that seems symbolic, as if a final act of desperation and powerlessness in the face of the unexpected changes in Diana's life. In this tense moment, Diana, gathering all her resolve, declares her intention to leave. The head maid responds to her with disdain, stating that Diana has always been a headache for everyone ever since, according to her, she seduced Atisha's fiancé. These accusations sound like a cold shower for Diana. She indignantly denies having seduced anyone in defense of her honor and dignity. The head maid, however, does not want to go into details. She dismisses these words like a pesky fly, saying that it does not matter to her. There is a note of sarcasm and contempt in her words when she mentions that Diana, with her good looks, has a chance of finding a decent husband unless she follows her mother's example. The words strike Diana like a bolt of lightning. She wants to object, but the words stick in her throat. She realizes that her mother gave birth to her out of wedlock, a fact she cannot deny. In this moment of tension, the head maid pulls gold and gems out of a drawer, paying Diana's salary for the month. The gesture, while seemingly generous in some ways, is imbued with disdain and a desire to get rid of Diana as quickly as possible. She receives her paycheck as if she were receiving her final ticket to freedom, leaving her old life and heading toward the unknown. The head maid, a woman with stern features and a soul-piercing gaze, turns to Diana. Her voice, full of determination and firmness, echoes in the young maid's ears as a herald of change. She urges Diana to pack up her meager belongings, collect her well-deserved paycheck, and leave the estate without delay. Her words, though dry and terse, leave in the air a sense of inevitability and the end of a chapter in Diana's life. Diana, whose youth and naivete have long since given way to courage and determination, accepts the challenge with dignity. She reaches out to take the bag of gold coins, heavy and cold, a symbol of her freedom and new beginning. With gratitude and a bow, she bids farewell to the woman who was once her mentor and guardian. As she leaves the estate, Diana feels the tension and anxiety that have clutched at her heart for years dissipate like a mist in the morning sun. She sighs in relief, feeling the wind of change play with her hair, promising new adventures and freedom. The old floorboards creak beneath her feet, reminding her that these walls have witnessed her growing up, her joys and sorrows. But now, as she packs her things, she realizes that her time here has passed. 5 years in the walls of the Baron's estate have left an indelible mark on her soul. But now she is ready to step into the unknown, into a world full of new opportunities and discoveries. When the moment of parting came, Diana found that at this important turning point in her life, there was only one soul left beside her, faithful and devoted, Lady Martin, the cook of the manor. This woman, whose hands were always busy creating culinary masterpieces, took the time to escort Diana into her new life. Trying to catch the glint of hope and confidence in her eyes, Lady Martin stood by her side, filled with concern and motherly care. Diana, promising Lady Martin to write as soon as she is settled in her new place, notices a shadow of sadness in the cook's eyes. With a frankness that was typical only of true friends, Lady Martin confesses that she cannot read. This confession, simple but deeply personal, adds to the sadness of the parting moment. Lady Martin was the only person on the estate who genuinely cared for Diana, supporting her in difficult moments, rejoicing in her successes. It was Lady Martin who had searched all night last night for Diana when she disappeared without a trace, showing that her care and attention was not confined to the kitchen walls. Lady Martin, as she saw Diana off, felt a mixture of anxiety and resentment. She couldn't just let Diana go into a ruthless world full of danger and the unknown. In her heart, she was angry at the man who had become Diana's new guardian, depriving her of the opportunity to continue to care for the girl as if she were her own daughter. This anger, however, could not overshadow the sincere love and hope for the best for Diana that burned in Lady Martin's heart. Her eyes reflected the pain of loss, but also a quiet pride in Diana, who was bravely stepping towards her new, uncharted future. Just as Diana was preparing to leave the estate, a luxurious carriage appeared on the horizon and slowly pulled up to the mansion. As Diana prepared to leave the mansion, a luxurious carriage appeared on the horizon and slowly pulled up to the mansion. Lady Martin, who was standing next to Diana, could not conceal her surprise at this unexpected and stately way in which Diana's new guardian appeared. When the carriage stopped, Hermann stepped out of it, dressed with consummate taste and elegance. His appearance seemed to emphasize the importance of the moment. Lady Martin, who had long been accustomed to the simplicity and modesty of life on the estate, was struck by Hermann's nobility and grace. This man, as if he had stepped out of the pages of a novel about knights and princesses, now stood before them in all his majestic beauty. Diana, with all courtesy and respect, introduced Lady Martin to Hermann, emphasizing that she was the one who had come to see her off. Hermann, showing true nobility and respect for a man, regardless of his social status, bowed before Lady Martin. This gesture was full of respect and gratitude. It spoke of many things, above all that Hermann valued each person for his contribution to Diana's life. Lady Martin, in turn, asked Hermann to take care of Diana. Her voice trembled with the overwhelming feelings of care, tenderness, and concern for Diana. Hermann, in his reply, showed sincerity and reliability, assuring Lady Martin that he would give no cause for alarm. These words sounded like a vow, a firm promise to preserve and protect Diana from all adversity. Diana's farewell to Lady Martin was filled with a deep emotional connection. As they hugged each other goodbye, it was as if they were trying to convey to each other all the love, gratitude, and warmth that had accumulated over the years. This moment symbolized the end of an important stage in Diana's life and the beginning of a new chapter full of hope and uncertainty. Diana, full of excitement and anticipation of her new life, ran briskly to the carriage. Hermann, showing care and gallantry, took her in his arms to help her into the carriage. The gesture was full of tenderness and care, which caused Diana slight embarrassment. When she was settled in the carriage, Hermann stroked her head as if confirming his support and protection. Hermann then noticed the flowers in Diana's hands. She explained that she wanted to put them on her mother's grave. This revelation made Hermann realize how important these flowers were to Diana and how much meaning they carried for her. Hermann, thinking aloud, mentioned Philippa, noting that she did not consider a bouquet a good gift, preferring something less ordinary. This comment hinted at the complexity of Philippa's character and her unusual tastes. The conversation suddenly changed topic when Hermann asked Diane how many people knew about the pendant she had gotten from her mother. Diana replied that only 4 people knew, including Hermann. Hermann immediately emphasized that the spirit contained in the pendant was very important. This statement added mystery to their conversation and emphasized the importance of the pendant in Diana's life. The sense of mystery and significance of the pendant lingered in the air as the carriage pulled away, taking Diana and Hermann to a new chapter in their lives. Each turn of the carriage wheels seemed to open a door to a new, uncharted world, full of mystery, adventure, and perhaps new discoveries about her own past and heritage. Hermann, gathering his thoughts and knowledge together, cautiously unraveled the mystery hidden in the depths of the pendant. He spoke respectfully and almost reverently about the fact that this pendant held much more than mere beauty or adornment. This object, he said, was a receptacle for a spirit, a powerful and mysterious being slumbering within. Hermann, like a wise man of old, plunged into speculation as to the reasons why this spirit might have awakened. His eyes reflected the excitement and curiosity that enveloped this unusual mystery. Meanwhile, Diana, the girl with the fire of curiosity in her eyes, for the first time truly realized the value and significance of her pendant. Her gaze, filled with wonder and reverence, slid over the elegant piece of jewelry, which now seemed to her not just a jewel but a key to unknown secrets. At this point, Hermann, with a sense of seriousness and responsibility, reminded Diana of the importance of maintaining the secrecy of their discovery. He urged her not to show the pendant to anyone or reveal its true nature. His voice sounded persuasive and insistent, as if he had a premonition that any careless handling of this mystery could lead to unpredictable and possibly dangerous consequences. After a long and languid journey through winding roads, crowded with heavy thoughts and unsolved mysteries, Hermann and Diana finally reached their grim but important destination, the cemetery. This place, where peace meets memory, seemed especially quiet and reserved in its sad grandeur. Little Diana to descend from the carriage. Together, step by step, they moved through the cemetery, like two shadows slowly gliding among the gravestones marking the stories of lives gone by. Each step they took was filled with gravity and respect for those who now rested in this place. They stopped at the grave of Diana's mother. The girl, with a deep sense of loss and remembrance, placed flowers on the grave. This gesture was simple, yet unspeakably profound, symbolizing the link between past and present, between daughter and mother. At this moment, Hermann, whose feelings were enveloped in a heavy veil of sadness, asked Diana in a trembling voice to return to the carriage. His request was quiet, but there was a sense of firmness in it. He wanted to be alone with the grave of his best friend, to honor her memory in silence and solitude, and perhaps to find answers to the questions that plagued his soul. It was a moment of personal grief and reflection when one comes face to face with one's memories and feelings. After leaving Hermann at the grave, Diana walked alone back to the carriage. The girl's heart was full of emotion, grief, wonder, and the elusive mystery that surrounded their journey. Soon, Hermann joined her, and they set out at once for the new place, the city of Aachen. The journey was filled with silence, in which each was absorbed in his own thoughts. When Diana learned that their next stop would be a bank, she was taken by surprise. The bank seemed like the last place they should be going at a time like this. But Hermann soon cleared up the situation, revealing to the girl another page of this mysterious story. He told of the Ori Bank, which belonged to the Countess of Ohrid. The name was not just famous, but also shrouded in legends and rumors. The Countess Ohrid was called the Mistress of Gold, which added a sense of grandeur and mystery to the story. Hermann mentioned that even the gold coins bore the name of this powerful woman, which indicated her undoubted influence and power. Hermann also emphasized that although she was called a countess, her actual power was far greater than the title might imply. These words added even more intrigue to their upcoming visit to the bank, making Diana and Hermann's journey even more unusual and mysterious. As the carriage moved slowly toward the Bank of Ori, Diana was absorbed in thoughts about the life of a countess. Thoughts of what it would be like to be a countess filled her head, making her imagine it as something akin to winning the lottery, endless wealth, power, respect, and influence that seemed so far removed from her own life. But her musings were suddenly interrupted by a sudden announcement from Hermann. He said that after he came to the balcon, he would look for a place for Diana to live. This statement made the girl wonder. As they walked through the bank, Hermann scrutinized the room, noting that everything here was the same as it had been on his last visit. These words brought nostalgia and a kind of longing for the past, when every corner, every corridor seemed to hold memories of those days. For Diana, these walls were something new and unknown, filled with mysteries and riddles that she wanted to solve together with Hermann. At a moment when the world seemed to be filled with noise and bustle, Hermann, as if following an invisible thread of fate, stopped before one peculiar door. This door, drowning in silence and solitude, seemed to conceal behind it a secret separated from the outer world. With a bold and decisive gesture, unconcerned with the usual standards of courtesy and invitation, Hermann swung it open, as if he were a lord who did not require permission to enter another's territory. Inside, the man who had until that moment been absorbed in his own thoughts and affairs suddenly looked up, taken by surprise. His eyes reflected initial surprise and then admiration at seeing Hermann before him. The man, quickly adjusting his glasses, a symbol of wisdom and focus, seemed to rethink the situation in an instant. He instantly jumped up from his seat, discarding his initial bewilderment and replacing it with a respectful tone. This change, not merely in his words, but in his whole manner, was so abrupt and sudden that it seemed as if he were a completely different person. Meanwhile, Diana, who was standing beside Hermann, watched the whole scene with bewilderment. Her gaze, full of curiosity and amazement, slid between the two men. Her eyes were filled with wonder at how one man could wield so much influence that even the air in the room seemed filled with his power. Hermann, standing before her as if he were the embodiment of power and authority, seemed to her something incredible and mysterious. Her gaze, full of questions and searching for answers, could not tear herself away from this unexpected and exciting picture. In a room where every object seemed imbued with the atmosphere of important decisions and financial transactions, the bank employee, regaining his equilibrium after Hermann's sudden appearance, turned his gaze to Diana. With a questioning expression on his face, he inquired about the identity of the mysterious lady standing next to Hermann. Diana, who was still in a state of mild shock from everything that had happened, slowly realized that the conversation was about her. Not long ago, she had been a mere servant, and now suddenly she was the center of attention in this world of power and wealth. Hermann, unruffled and focused, brushed the question aside as if it were a pesky fly. His voice sounded confident and resolute as he turned the conversation to a more important subject, the state of his account. It was as if he had cast aside all incidental thoughts and details and concentrated on the main purpose of his visit. At this moment, Hermann, taking off his jacket with ease, seemed to be preparing for a more serious and confidential conversation in privacy. Diana, driven by old maid habits, almost automatically reached out her hands to take his jacket. But Hermann's look of surprise and bewilderment made her stop. Her eyes flashed with the realization of her own mistake, and her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Her voice, trembling and apologetic, was filled with the realization that she had unwittingly transferred habits from her past to this new world. Hermann, however, answered her with ease and even with a note of benevolence in his voice. He assured her that there was no need to apologize, but at the same time advised her to abandon her old habits as a maid. His words did not sound like an order, but more like a reminder that the world they were in demanded a new image and a new role for her. Diana, alone in this exquisitely decorated room, felt a little lost. Hermann, always the center of attention, suggested that she sit down and rest while he dealt with important papers. His figure, receding, still remained in her gaze until he was out of sight. Left to herself, Diana found the cookies Hermann had offered in front of her. With some uncertainty, but with pleasure, she began to devour it, allowing herself to forget for a moment the world of grandeur and wealth around her. The furnishings of the room were something completely new to Diana. She slowly examined every corner, every detail of the interior, trying to catch and memorize this atmosphere of luxury and refinement. Her gaze reflected her amazement that Hermann, who had just left the room, was behaving here with such confidence and calmness, as if it were his own element. But Diana's gaze stopped on a portrait hanging on the wall. It was a painting of El Pasa Orid, a black-haired girl with a white dove on her arm. The girl's eyes, as scarlet as Diana's and her mother's, reflected a kind of mystery and mystery. Diana remembered the words of her mother, who had always told her to hide her eyes in public, but had never explained why it was necessary. This painting, this portrait, evoked in her a feeling of deep kinship and, at the same time, of incomprehension and curiosity about the secrets hidden in the depths of those scarlet eyes. After a brief but seemingly eternal absence, Herman re-entered the room. His appearance seemed to interrupt the magic of the moment in which Diana had been absorbed in her thoughts. With a smile and his usual ease, he invited Diana to go home. It made her heart beat faster, for now she could really call this magnificent house her own. The next moment, however, Diana felt a sudden rush of embarrassment. Her face flushed as she hesitantly admitted to Herman that she had no money. The thought, spoken aloud, made her feel uncomfortable and even a little ashamed of her situation. She had never thought she would face such a situation, facing her poverty. But then Herman suddenly laughed. His laughter sounded light and carefree. He placed a stack of papers in front of Diana. She looked at the papers slowly, and her eyes widened with surprise. They were inheritance papers, to the tune of 700 million gold, as well as lands and buildings, all left to her by her mother. Diana felt her world change dramatically. She was no longer the same person she had been only moments before. The inheritance opened up new horizons and opportunities that she had never dreamed of before. This moment was a turning point in her life, the beginning of a new chapter, full of unknowns and promises. Standing in front of Diana, Herman placed a bag filled with gold coins on the table. The amount of gold in it was staggering. For Diana, who had worked as a maid all her life, the bag represented the equivalent of about 2,000 of her monthly wages. And this was only a small part of her newly acquired fortune. Herman, noticing her dazed look, said that they could go home now. Diana, still trembling with excitement and bewilderment, followed him. Everything seemed somehow unreal to her, like a dream from which she would soon awaken. Together they went to the realtor's office. The trip was filled with silence, but it was a silence imbued with expectation and hope. It was a step into a whole new world for Diana, a world where she was no longer a mere servant, but an heiress to a vast fortune. Her mind was spinning with thoughts of the future, of how her life would change now that she had such resources and opportunities. Arriving at the realtor's office, Herman and Diane began the process of choosing the house that would become her new home. For Diana, each option seemed like something from another dimension: luxurious villas, estates with swimming pools, elegant city apartments. Herman carefully outlined to the realtor his requirements for Diane's future home. He was concerned for Diane's comfort and safety and wanted to provide her with a home that reflected her new status and wealth. Diana stood nearby, soaked in a mixture of excitement and bewilderment. For her, the whole situation seemed more like a dream than a reality. The realtor, taking into account all of Herman's requirements, confidently stated that the cost of such a house would be quite impressive. Herman, however, brushed this remark aside, showing that financial matters did not trouble him. He was ready to invest any amount of money in Diana's comfort and safety. For Diana, who had lived her whole life in conditions of modesty and lack, such talk seemed almost fantastic. Not so long ago, she couldn't even afford to dream of a house of her own, but now the doors were opening to a world where anything was possible. This change of circumstances had changed her life abruptly, and she felt herself changing along with it. An inner struggle between her usual sense of humility and her newfound position as heiress was stirring in her soul. Herman, however, seemed determined to help her adapt to this new life of opportunity and choice. Herman looked at Diana carefully, feeling that the huge and luxurious house did not arouse in her the emotions he had expected. He realized that, despite its external splendor and wealth, such a house did not correspond to her inner world and ideas about comfort. Herman offered to walk through the house so that Diana could better feel its atmosphere, but he had already decided in his heart that after that they would look for something more modest and cozy. As she walked through the luxurious halls and rooms, Diana felt every detail of the interior remind her of how foreign this house was to her. The great hall seemed too opulent, the fountain in the garden unnecessary. She realized that although such a house was impressive in its luxury, it did not give the feeling of domestic warmth and comfort she was looking for. Herman, watching Diana's reaction, realized that his intuition had not failed him. He respected her feelings and desires and was willing to support her in finding a house that would be a real home for her, not just a display of wealth and status. He decided that after looking at this house, they would look at smaller options where Diana could find exactly the atmosphere she was looking for. Simple but refined, modest but tasteful. Diana was deep in thought, pondering the reasons for Herman's concern for her. Despite his friendship with her mother, he was still a stranger to her. The question arose in her mind. Why had Herman been entrusted with the care of her inheritance? As if out of the blue, she suddenly turned to Herman with an impertinent question as to whether he was her father. This question took Herman by surprise, causing a surge of emotion in him. Herman could not conceal his indignation and cried out with bitterness in his voice that he was not the man who would leave his child and girlfriend to their fate. His words were full of despair and bewilderment. How could anyone think him capable of such a low act as to conceive a child and then abandon its mother in loneliness and distress, especially after the mother's death, leaving the child uncared for, doomed to serve in someone else's home? Herman continued to express his feelings, but in the end, he simply stated soberly that he was only a friend of her mother's, nothing more. It was a momentary culmination of the excitement and misunderstandings that had suddenly burst forth in the course of their conversation. Diana, feeling embarrassed and awkward, suddenly expressed her thought. She would feel much better if Herman turned out to be her father. However, as soon as she said those words, she realized their inappropriateness and hurriedly apologized to Herman, realizing that her words might have upset him. At that moment, Diana felt like she was on waves of embarrassment and regret, trying to smooth over the awkwardness of the moment. Herman, for his part, reacted with understanding. He confidently assured Diana that everything was fine and admitted that he himself would not mind if Diana was really his daughter. Herman's words were full of warmth and sincerity, showing more than just friendly concern. However, remembering Diana's real parents, Herman suddenly fell into deep thought. His face reflected anxiety and worry as he realized that if circumstances had turned out differently, the consequences for everyone involved could have been catastrophic. The thought enveloped him with seriousness, pushing aside all previous emotions and opening a new round of reflection on the complexity of human relationships and their unpredictability. After much searching and considering many options, Diane and Herman finally found a house that literally made Diane's heart beat faster. This house, with its aura of comfort and warmth, instantly caught Diana's eye. Her eyes sparkled with delight and joy as she exclaimed that it was the best place they had ever seen. The realtor accompanying them began to describe the house, adding details that only added to its appeal. It was a wooden house with 2 floors and 5 bedrooms. But not everything was perfect. The house had been unoccupied for 30 years and needed some repairs to become a real home again. Herman, listening attentively to the realtor, remarked that perhaps they could have found a better house for Diana. But Diane, delighted with the place, quickly replied that this was the house she liked best. She explained that the house reminded her of the one she lived in with her mom. This gave the house a special value in her eyes, making it not just a building of wood and brick, but a place filled with warm memories and a sense of home. This house seemed like the perfect refuge for Diana, where she could begin a new chapter of her life. In the silence of the night, enveloped in a soft blanket of darkness, Herman found himself at Diana's wooden house, the embodiment of solitude and tranquility. His hands, moving smoothly in a magical ritual, enveloped the dwelling in a protective field, invisible to the naked eye, but insurmountable to any evil intent. He took off his hood and sighed, satisfied that the magical barrier he had created was secure. His eyes flashed with surprise. His protective magic, usually reserved for significant and powerful structures, now surrounded this humble wooden house. Herman imagined how the students in the magic tower would have fainted with amazement at such luxurious protection for an ordinary dwelling. His thoughts unconsciously drifted to Diana, the girl who had awakened so many questions in him. he still couldn't get over the idea that she was the daughter of Philippa, a legendary figure in the world of magic. He wondered if Diana could become a Nohiveden, a worthy member of this noble and powerful family. But here another thought sprang into his mind, adding another mystery to this mysterious story. If Philippa and Tessowitz never consummated their destinies by marriage, would there still be a chance for Diana to accept her place in the Nokivaden family? These questions swirled in Herman's mind, adding mystery and unpredictability to his night's task. The Duke of Nohiwaden and the Countess of Ori, figures shrouded in an aura of power and influence, behave as eternal antagonists in a world of aristocracy. The Duke, the exalted guardian of the mighty empire that sprawls across the north, and the Countess, touted as the consummate mistress of gold, miss no opportunity to besmirch each other's name. Their words are as sharp as razors, and each is calculated to astonish and injure. This incessant confrontation has created a hostile and strained relationship between them, the shadow of which casts a dark shadow over both their homes. In this atmosphere of hostility and mutual resentment, fate has brought Tessowitz Bale Nohiveden and Philippa Orid together. They are the sole heirs of their powerful families, but their potential union, which could have been a symbol of peace and harmony, is doomed to failure. The wounds and resentments are too deep, the animosity fanned by their parents too acute. This enmity stands between Tessowitz and Philippa like an invisible barrier, making their possible union not only unlikely but dangerous for both parties, since any rapprochement could be seen as a betrayal of their own home. Countess Orid, who was Diana's grandmother, held to her principles with unbending determination. She categorically refused to recognize Tessowitz, which was a key moment for Herman. He realized that it was necessary to act quickly and decisively. Herman, reflecting on the situation, came to the conclusion that he needed to take steps to get Tessowitz to meet Diana as soon as possible. It was important to do this before Countess Orid, with her unwavering convictions and authority, found Diana. Herman realized that the meeting between Tessowitz and Diana must take place in an environment free from the Countess's influence in order to allow a pure and unbiased relationship to develop between the young people. Meanwhile, Diana, the personification of innocence and novelty in this confusing world of aristocracy, stepped onto the threshold of her new home for the first time. It was a momentous occasion for her, for the first time in her life she was faced with a choice that seemed almost unbelievable: to choose her own room, anything she wanted. This choice symbolized to her more than just a choice of a place to live. It was a choice of freedom, autonomy, and privacy that had previously seemed unattainable to her. Diana felt a slight embarrassment and excitement at being able to make her own decisions, which was a new and exciting experience for her. On leaving the house, Herman, whose cares and anxieties about Diana's future had kept him in suspense, admonished her. He ordered her to rest and not to clean, assuring her that hired maids would arrive the next day to take care of it. Diana, habitually assuming the role of maid, found herself confused. She was not accustomed to idleness, and was puzzled as to what to do now that Herman was trying to wean her from her old habits. And at that moment, as if prompted by fate, Diana remembered the letter which Lady Martin had given her at parting. It was a letter from Tessior, a mysterious and important figure in her life. With a light heartbeat filled with anticipation and curiosity, Diana carefully unfolded the letter. She tuned in to read it, eager to find out what Tessior wanted to tell her. The letter could reveal new facets of her destiny, answer many questions that troubled her, or even offer a direction for further action in this complex and confusing world. Unfolding the letter, Diana began to read the words written by Tessior Fabre, son of Count Fabre, and a student of her mother, Philippa Orid. Tessior was not just an acquaintance to Diana, he had been her friend since she was a child. Their companionship was special, for they had no other peers to share their childhood joys and sorrows. However, after Philippa's tragic death, Tessior went to boarding school, and their communication was reduced to an exchange of letters. In this letter, Tessior, following a long tradition, congratulated Diana on her upcoming birthday. Diana smiled as she realized that she had forgotten about such an important event. Tessior, a loyal and attentive friend, had not forgotten to congratulate her, as he did every year. In his message, Tessier talked about his life at the boarding house. He mentioned the good teachers who, though they could not compare with Philippa, had a great influence on him. He also said that he had made many new friends, but there was a touch of nostalgia in every word. He said that none of these new acquaintances could compare to the time he had spent with Diana. Tessior concluded his letter by expressing his desire to meet Diana again, thus reviving in her heart the memories of their days together. As Diana turned the pages of Tessior's letters, she was transported back in time to the days when her mother was still with her. These lines were a link to those times, filled with warmth and love. But suddenly, Herman burst into her world like a whirlwind, bringing with him an unexpected excitement. In his arms, a small puppy came to life and instantly attracted Diana's attention. With a soft smile, Herman announced that it was a gift. Diana, wrapped in excitement and tenderness, carefully took the baby, whose blue eyes shone like gems. The puppy, with his light, soft fur, immediately felt a connection with his new owner and began to lick her joyfully, giving a feeling of boundless affection and love. Meanwhile, Diana, still cherishing the little miracle in her arms, decided to check with Herman about how he knew about her upcoming birthday. Herman, with a note of mystery in his voice, replied that he could not reveal the source of this information. In reality, however, he had no idea of the coming holiday. The real reason for the puppy's appearance was Herman's desire to protect Diana, for this magical animal was not just a pet, but a reliable guardian and faithful companion for her in the upcoming trials. Just as Diana was beginning to get used to the puppy's presence, Herman seemed to deliberately bring excitement back into her life. He stroked her head affectionately, as if trying to comfort her and prepare her for her impending separation. With seriousness in his voice, he announced that the puppy would protect the girl in his absence, as if anticipating the dangers that would befall her. Diana, confused and at the same time anxious, could not understand why Herman could be absent at all. She was so accustomed to his support and presence that even the thought of his departure seemed intolerable. But Herman, unexpectedly to Diana, revealed his plans, which stunned her to the core. He was going to leave the continent, and his journey was connected with urgent business on the eastern continent. A wave of disappointment and sadness swept over Diana. She could not bear the thought of parting. Perhaps she had been accustomed to thinking of Herman as a kind of safe haven, a place to turn to for help and support. But now that he was to go on a long journey, she felt her heart grow anxious and uncertain about the future. At the moment when Herman had revealed to Diana his intentions of leaving the continent, she had begun to piece together in her mind like a jigsaw puzzle the pictures of the past days, realizing how their common history had been unfolding all along. She remembered when Herman had bought her a house, an act that now took on a whole new meaning. Diana realized that Herman had always been a man of travel, his life a continuous series of trips to different continents. And this house, which she had thought of as a shared nest, was really nothing more than a way to keep her safe and cozy in his absence. There were dreams in her mind of a life together with Herman in this house, of days filled with the happiness and joy of their company. But now these dreams seemed shattered, and the house seemed not a cozy refuge for hearts in love, but only a temporary shelter while Herman was on his next trip. Diana felt her heart fill with longing and loneliness at the thought that she would spend most of her time alone in this house, waiting for Herman to return from his faraway wanderings.